Embiid stepping back and stroking two. Bogdanovich thinking about a three. There it is. Yes!
See it again. No double team help, and Embiid takes it right to the rack.
Embiid, step back, jumper, you bet!
There he is again. The Euro step there. Embiid getting Gobert in a fight.
Man, we may have to cancel the podcast now. My God. What's going on, everybody? This is the feed to Embiid. I am your host, as always, Austin Krell, along with a good pal of mine, fellow Sixers beat reporter Kai Carlin of USA Today and Sixers Wire. Kai, how are you doing on this holiday?
I'm doing good, man. I want to wish you a good morning. So team's on an 8-game winning streak, so it makes it easier to write about right now, and I feel like things are okay at the moment.
Yeah, you look like you have a new shine over your face. Were you doing something fun? Or?
No, just I'm moisturizing a bit more, using more facial cleanser. Just kind of doing stuff it's self-care, man. Self-care.
Yeah, that's right.
Self-care.
So we do have a good topic today. And because I chose this topic today because we sit here, we have the Heat playing versus the Celtics. We have the Knicks playing today. A lot of play-in scenarios. Now, the Sixers, it appears, are, for most intents and purposes, locked into that top seed, unless something catastrophically bad happens. But it is Philadelphia, so can't discount the possibility of that happening.
You never know.
we never know. So, but there is just really two games separating the 4 seed from the 7 seed in the East, and therefore there are 2 games separating the Knicks from a play-in tournament. There is 1.5 games separating the Hawks from the play-in tournament. There is 1 game separating the Heat from the play-in tournament. So the 4 play-in teams that are in there as of now, if you froze it, are Boston, Charlotte, Washington, and Indiana. And Kai, as I sit here today and I think about the Celtics, I don't know that I would pick them to beat any of the other 3 play-in teams.
I don't know. It would be hard to really pick one of them to beat the other 3 play-in teams. But at the same time, we're talking about a team that has Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker. and with a team like that it's only 1 game. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always kind of lean towards a team like that with all the firepower they have. So, for example, like I think they would play Charlotte, right? In the first play-in game.
The Celtics? Yeah, they would.
Yeah, it would be because it's 7 versus 8 and then 9 versus 10, right?
Right. So they would play. They play the Celtics would play the Hornets, and then Wizards would play the Pacers. And it looks like the Pacers are gonna. It looks like the clock is gonna run out on the teams behind the Pacers, so they're probably locked into that 10 spot. They don't have to worry about missing from everything I can tell. Though they are a putrid team, 12-21 at home, 9-15 on the road. Weird team.
That's definitely weird.
Yeah, so the Celtics have to win 1 game to basically avoid the 8 seed. So they win 1 game. They beat Charlotte once. They get to play the Nets or the Bucks. So congratulations to them. Then the Charlotte goes on and they play the winner of the
9-10 game.
Yes, that's correct. And then the loser of the 9-10 game is eliminated. And it comes down to who wins the the winner of that 7 versus 8 and 9 versus 10, the loser of a 7 versus 8 and 9 versus 10 game. And then whoever wins that, I think they get the 1 seed. The winner gets the 1 seed, and then the loser just is eliminated. So that's how it works. So what we're gonna do today, because the Sixers have really no idea who they're playing yet. we're going to take a look at each of the six, really the 7 teams that have a chance to to be in that play-in tournament. So that's the Knicks, the Hawks, the Heat, the Celtics, Hornets, Wizards, and Pacers. Now, I did give you one parameter. The one parameter was you can pick one team that you are just completely unafraid of. Like for
Yes.
this, you can no matter what research you did or didn't do in some cases, you just can't find a reason to that there would be a hole that they could exploit. So we each get one. Doesn't mean you have to use it, but each get one if needed. And when we say that we're unafraid of this team relative to another team, doesn't mean that we think the Sixers would lose to any of the Knicks, Hawks, Heat, Celtics, Hornets, Wizards, or Pacers. We're not saying that. We're just saying that relatively speaking, compared to the other options on the menu, those we could foresee maybe a problem there.
Yeah.
With that being said, Kai, let's get started. And before we get started, happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mothers out there. Miss Carlin, who has raised herself, it seems, a Casanova of sorts. And me, my mother, thanks. I love my mom to death. She's the best. We have had a bit of a tough weekend. We had to put one of our dogs to sleep on Friday, but it was coming. And she was very close to that dog, so tough weekend for her for sure. I actually ordered her Mother's Day gift that had his name on it, so I
look at you
scrambling to try to figure out do I get it redone so that way she doesn't have to live with that pain or what.
So thoughtful.
I know. Anyway, happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. You thank you for all you do for your children. We could not make it this far without you all making the sacrifices that you've made and your undying love for sure. So we gotten that done. Now, Kai, let's talk about the first team, and that would be the. Do you want to order of 10 down to 4 or 4 to 10?
I think we'll just do 10 to 4. I feel like that'll be easier.
Okay, start with the Pacers. So, Kai, is there something about the Pacers that scares you?
No, the Pacers are the one team, according to our parameters, that I am completely unafraid of this team. Just completely. And it's only because of what's going on with the reports coming out about Coach Nate Bjorkgren and just players clearly are not having it. Obviously, Domantas Sabonis is, he's an all-star. Miles Turner is a very good center, but I know Turner's dealing with injuries. Malcolm Brogdon's also dealing with injuries. And you're pretty much relying on just Karis LeVert and Domantas Sabonis to try to carry you. And it's okay. I mean, Philadelphia's got so many options you can kind of throw at them. So, if there was one team that I'm completely unafraid of, it's the Indiana Pacers.
Wow. I do agree that the seeming internal issues with them is certainly something that it's the type of thing that gets you bounced in the first round via sweep. It does seem to be. There is I wouldn't say there's echoes of Sixers 2019-20, but clearly there's some turmoil there, and people are not happy all the way around. So we'll see what put out there, but I do have one reason I think I would be a little bit concerned about the Pacers, and that would be what is Miles Turner for this series? He's been out for however long he's been out for. If he's unavailable, then that really kind of pokes a hole in any kind of concern that you might have. But
right.
But if he is available, obviously Embiid owns him head to head,
all the time.
It's 25-12 to 9-6 comparison.
I tell y'all,
it's really kind of sad. But he's still a really good rim protector from a reputational standpoint. I think Gobert gives up 62.6% against teams shoot 62.6% against Gobert within 6 feet of the basket. Well, for Miles Turner, that's 61.7%. So I mean, he's a very good rim protector. He's in that conversation for DPOY every year. I think Embiid would probably be able to have his way with them, but let's say let's say Embiid bites a fake early or is a little too handsy around the rim, gets called for 2 fouls, then you might have a problem. And then you might have a problem there. And now I don't think that's to say that it would be something that would have long-term effects that result in the Sixers losing 4 games in a series. But I think it's something that could make them lose a game, maybe 2. But generally speaking, I'm not too concerned about them, and I think the Pacers are a little top-heavy size. I think I did the research on the average height yesterday. I think it's about 6'7" for the Sixers and 6'6" for the Pacers. If you remove players that are like not playing in games that aren't rotation players, it's about the same. Sixers are maybe basically the same size, but still they're very top heavy, the Pacers, whereas the Sixers are very middle heavy in terms of size. So I think if you get Simmons or Embiid caught in the paint and they're committing 2 fouls early, that could be problematic for helping Karis LeVert or Malcolm Brogdon or Sabonis get going. Besides that, I don't really foresee much of an issue. What's the longest do you think that series would go?
4. I'm so serious, man.
4. Okay.
Then about Indiana, that Indiana is tough. They'll fight you, but I mean, no, they're no match for Philadelphia. They're just not.
Okay. I would say that series probably goes 5.
That's also fair. Quick.
Yeah.
Either way, quick.
Gentlemen's sweep. Now let's go over the Wizards. Wizards.
See, the Wizards scare me.
Okay. Now let's see why.
Sixers would clearly beat them. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but the way Russell Westbrook is playing right now and how he feels disrespected, which he has been disrespected by everybody over the past couple of years, has been annoying. But with the way Russell Westbrook is playing and Bradley Beal, he scored 60 against the Sixers earlier this year. So I mean, they had issues with Bradley Beal. Davis Bertans that dude has unlimited range. It's weird, especially for a guy his size. He's kind of fires it from the logo and he hits it. He's got Steph Curry range. And then there's Rui Hachimura, who I think is a very good young player. This Daniel Gafford is okay. Joel would kill him, but Daniel Gafford does provide a lot of energy. And that's why the Sixers would win the series in 5 or 6 games, is because, Joel would absolutely kill the Wizards down low as usual. But for me, it's Russ and Beal. Russ and Beal and Bertans. So those 3 guys would scare me a bit, especially if Russ goes into that mode where just he wants to kill you. And the same goes for Beal too. I mean, speaking of Indiana, Washington just played Indiana. Bradley Beal dropped 50. Russ dropped 33, 15, and 13, whatever it was, and they beat Indiana in overtime. It was a close game, but the Wizards were still able to go on the road to get a win. That's a tough team. That would be a tough matchup.
I agree. I think also they started out they were 13 games under 500 or 14 games under 500, whatever it was. Now they're doing 4 games. So I mean they won 15 of 19. Sometimes a team that has found its stride late in the season is a little bit more challenging and more dangerous than a team that has stayed in the race all season long, because it's really just a matter of confidence and momentum when you're a low seed like that. But I looked this up yesterday, and Russ is not exactly what he was in Houston after the All-Star break before COVID, but his threes are down. His turnovers are still pretty high, but I mean he's scoring much more efficiently, and he's obviously passing the ball as well as anybody right now. He's racking up triple doubles, and dribble penetration for the Sixers has been an issue lately, with guys like Kobe White,
right,
and like whoever the Spurs are throwing out, those are problematic. A lot of the games that were blowouts ended up not being blowouts because of that, dribble penetration stuff. So, I mean, if they're giving them problems, Russell Westbrook's going to be a problem because he's the king of dribble penetration. He could pick you apart with that.
Exactly.
So I think the concern becomes I don't think they're going to do much roamer play with Simmons. I think he's going to be locked on the one guy, probably Bradley Beal. So if he's theoretically on Bradley Beal, who is guarding Russell Westbrook? Is that Matisse Thybulle?
I mean, would it be Danny Green?
I don't know. I think that's.
Would it be Danny Green? Would it be George Hill? Like there are a couple of different options Doc could throw at him, but in the starting lineup, I feel like it would have to be Danny Green.
Okay. I would think maybe you put Thybulle in the starting lineup.
But I don't know. I don't know if Doc would do that because Doc is a guy who like historically likes to keep consistency.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I also think that it comes to like, could the argument be made that asking Thybulle to play a bigger role than he's had to play this season, could that be problematic in of itself, in that you're compromising the rotational patterns that you established all season? So basically what you said. Or alternatively, is Philly's offense with Simmons, Harrison, and Embiid, which, by the way, that outscores opponents by 15.6 points per 100, which is third best of all three-man units in the NBA, to play at least 800 minutes this year. I mean, they're pretty dominant. Does that really even matter, considering how dominant they've been? I think those are all things that, like, yeah, Doc doesn't want to compromise consistency. But if the doctor calls for it, figuratively,
the doctor.
I think it's something where it's like, well, hey, we had to maybe think about this. But yeah, the spacing would be kind of crapped up a little bit. But then again, Embiid, Simmons, Harris, the trio, you put in Danny there, whatever. They've been so good this year that I think you can sort of negate some of the issues you have with Thybulle.
Here's my thing, though, with Tobias. And this goes for any playoff series. His playoff numbers, and I'm sure you've looked them up too, Austin. His playoff numbers are not good. They haven't been good. They haven't been good in his first two playoff runs in Philadelphia in 2019. I cut him some slack for 2020 just because 2020 was such a weird year, but he still he was awful in that playoff series with Boston. And then even if you go,
talking about Ben?
Tobias.
Oh, Tobias, yeah.
Yeah, Tobias. And even if you go back to his one playoff run with Detroit, his playoff numbers were pretty bad in that series as well. So just that's one thing I would probably be concerned about if I'm a Sixers fan, not just with this first round series, but for series going beyond. Is Tobias Harris going to be the player we have been seeing and take leaps and bounds forward, in this regular season, or is he going to go back to the player he was in the playoffs before? And I feel like that could be an issue against a team like, say, a Washington, just because the Wizards are so explosive offensively that the Sixers are going to have to kind of try to keep up with them in some of these games.
Yeah. I also think, like, you really can't go zone against the Wizards because Bertans is such good shooting gravity that, like, he'll hit 2 or 3 in a row and turn the game on its head. So, right. I mean, I think that would be problematic as well. So I think they would kind of constrict you into what you can do defensively. But that being said, I think if you just throw the ball into Embiid in the middle, it's game. It's over. Like, they don't have any.
For sure. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, a lot of these teams, none of these teams have anybody to match up with Joel. So it's like,
yeah.
What?
Let me ask you this. Do you think there's a team that he sees that he's just like, God, I want to play them first round. I want to, like, I would get 40 points a game. Just like, you think he would never say it, but I'm sure there are teams that he would love.
Probably Washington. Like probably Washington, just because, like, who do the Wizards have to throw at him? They don't have Thomas Bryant. They don't even have Mo Wagner anymore. Like, that dude's in Orlando. So, like, they've got Daniel Gafford,
I would venture to say Washington, Charlotte, or Boston would be teams he'd love to play.
Oh, Boston. I'm sure he would love to get a piece of Boston, just because of, like, the playoff history. Like, I'm sure he would love to get them in round one.
Yeah. So that would be, my concern with Washington. How many games does that series
go? Depending on Russ and Beal, it could go 6, but it could also go 5.
Yeah, I don't think they'd sweep. I think you could go 5 or 6.
Yeah, like I said, the Sixers would beat them. It's not like they wouldn't, but the reason why I'm saying 6 even is because of how powerful that Russ and Beal duo is. You
Yeah.
know, like you could argue that it's playing better than even the John Wall Bradley Beal duo, which was highly successful.
Yeah, I think my concern is like well, not really concerned, but I think you can. I think Beal and Westbrook could win a game in that series by themselves.
Right.
So I mean, there's your 2 wins right there. So I mean, I don't think they had the personnel around them to win the string 4 games out of 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now, next team, the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, you know what? Like this was close to being my team, the team that I'm completely unafraid of, Austin. Just because we kind of mentioned it, Joel would average 40 against them because the Hornets would be throwing PJ Washington, Cody Zeller, and Bismack Biyombo at them, and like maybe Miles Bridges in a smaller matchup. But like he would destroy the Charlotte Hornets. But I'd be concerned about the Hornets for a little bit just because of the way they push the ball in transition. The way LaMelo Ball, now that he's healthy, LaMelo Ball being able to push the ball up and down the floor. Then there's Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham, Miles Bridges I just mentioned, and also their play-by-play guy Eric Collins. I feel like he plays a role in all this. I don't know how, but like Eric Collins plays a role.
Bro, I'm telling you, Eric Collins, I love Eric Collins.
He's a national treasure. Home diddly D.
Hum diddly dee. He makes everything seem like the playoffs. It is tremendous.
Exactly. So I mean, he does a hell of a job. So he's going to play a factor somehow. But I mean, like the reason why I mentioned about LaMelo Ball transition defense, Sixers have continued to kind of struggle in that area. They have made subtle improvements a little bit lately. But it just I feel like that would still be an issue, especially with the way LaMelo Ball can push the ball and get guys involved in the passing and how explosive he is. So I'll take the Sixers in like 4 or 5 games, but I feel like they would all be really tough games.
Yeah, I'm looking right here. So like Charlotte, they force 14.7 turnovers per game, which is 10th tied for 10th in the NBA. And the Sixers are second in the NBA, 15.6. So, I mean, I think Charlotte could turn them over, but by the same token, I think Philly would be able to respond with that as well and push that pace. And I think overwhelmingly experience would take over in that series.
For sure.
There was nothing that they were my one team that I'm just completely unafraid of. I outside of like maybe Terry Rozier goes on one of his ridiculous efficient shot making binges that he's done this season. But like realistically, you win maybe you lose maybe 1-2 games in a series. Because of that, I think they would win that series in 4 games.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, 4 or 5. Like I feel like, as you kind of mentioned, Terry Rozier kind of going on one of those random hot streaks, especially at the end of games. Like I remember, I think it was they played Utah or Phoenix, somebody really good earlier in the year, and Rozier just hit this ridiculous step back jumper for the win to beat them. And just like I think the Rozier factor. Remember, he also played a role against Philly in the playoffs in 2018 with Boston. So, I mean, like he's got like some type of experience there. So, I mean, Charlotte wouldn't offer too much of a challenge, but the transition defense would definitely be a concern for me if they played them.
You said that will be a concern for you if they played them?
The transition defense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, let me take a look here. Next up, we got the Boston Celtics. Before we get into the Celtics, if you like shotgunning beer and you want to increase your shotgun time at parties, check out my boys at the King Cobra. The King Cobra is a shotgunning tool that makes the perfect shotgunning hole in under a second. Also a tab puller, vent puncher, and all fits on a keychain. For more information about the King Cobra, check them out on Instagram at the King Cobra Co. That's the King Cobra Co. And Cobra is spelled with a K. For 10% discount on all products, enter the code TrustTheCobra10, all caps, all one word. Pick up yours today. Kai, we go over to the Boston Celtics too. they win a couple nice games, then they lose a couple dreadful ones. They lose to the Chicago Bulls a couple nights ago. My guess would be they probably lose to the Miami Heat today. I don't know what to make of them. They concern. I mean, there is obviously a reason to be concerned, but I think that's a game. I think that's a series Sixers would win in 5 or 6. And I think I see some hesitation there from you.
Because it's Boston. It's the Celtics, and I would probably take the Sixers in 6. Maybe if Walker and Tatum and Brown are all playing well, could go to 7. Like the Celtics to me are just like they just always seem to have their number, man. They just always seem to have their number. Granted, this is a new regime. This is Doc. This isn't Brett Brown. Sixers are a much better roster than Boston. And as you mentioned, the Celtics had some awful losses, not just the Bulls. They lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder, like the tanking Thunder.
I saw like this is a screenshot. It was just like a big red sea of L's. And then
the one green W for OKC over Boston. And it was like, so it was completely random. And I mean, like the casual fan couldn't tell you 4 players on the Thunder right now. And the Thunder, they go into Boston to beat the Celtics. So the Celtics are definitely a weird team, but I would definitely be afraid of them just because I think you mentioned it earlier about when you were concerned about Westbrook penetration, dribble penetration. And that's what Kemba Walker lives off of. Tatum too. So it's just like I look at the Celtics and they have nobody to guard Joel, especially after trading Daniel Tice. Tristan Thompson is a nobody. Joel will destroy Tristan Thompson. He will chew him up and spit him out. My concern is on the other end with Tatum, Brown, and Walker. Those are 3 all-star players.
You just brought me back to the time when they interviewed Joel after the Nets game.
And, he's a nobody.
First of all, he's a nobody. That was great. The Celtics, I think it's just exercising demons of the past with the Celtics. Yeah. And that would be like the only thing that would scare me about them. Really, like Kemba is an X factor in that series, like you said, because I think you can counter Tatum and Brown long enough where you could eke out a 7-game series. But I think Kemba is the one where if they go drop coverage, Kemba gets hot. He can take over a game that way and really cause problems. And they always have problems with defending guys with low centers of gravity, can play downhill in that pick and roll. And I don't know they have a defender agile enough to stay with Kemba. You could argue Thibault maybe elevate his role for playoffs, but then what do you do if Kemba does one of those hesitations and Thibault runs into the back of him, 2 quick fouls on Thibault? Then you have a problem.
Right. And I mean, a lot of people like to kind of go to Matisse, but if you look at Matisse against guys like Kemba Walker, those are the guys that Matisse, the rare guys that Matisse does struggle with. The only one that he really was able to lock up was De'Aaron Fox of Sacramento. I even go back to the Brooklyn game when the Nets were here. I think it was April 14th. I think Kyrie had 37 that night, and I think 10 of those points came again when Thibault was guarding him, specifically per NBA.com tracking stats. And Kyrie was on Ramadan at that time, man. That man wasn't even drinking water yet. That man wasn't even drinking water, and he was still getting buckets.
Imagine what he's like with a full meal in him.
That's what I'm saying. I do have some concerns, with this team come playoff time. And again, Philadelphia would beat Boston. They would. But I feel like it'd be a lot tougher than what a lot of people are trying to think of, just because they swept the regular season series. Even last year, Philadelphia beat Boston 3 out of 4 times. Then they went to the playoffs and Boston swept them. So it's something that the Celtics are not going to be a pushover.
So I think the Sixers win that series in 5 or 6. What do you think?
6, possibly even 7.
You think I think it would be a disaster if it goes 7 games.
Yeah, I think it would too. But I really think that highly of the Celtics. I really think that highly of Kemba, Jason, and Jalen. And also, as you kind of alluded to earlier, Austin, just the demons of the Celtics. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a little effort to exercise them.
Do the Celtics really have the depth to like win to push a series at the Sixers to 7 games? Like the whole reason behind their struggle has been they just don't have anybody to do it. It's like versatile enough outside of the starting unit.
Agreed. But my thing is though, I feel like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker are just such elite talents that that they can pretty much make up for the lack of depth, if that makes sense. Like Philadelphia's got the best player in this series in Joel, but Boston might have the next 3 best players with Kemba, Jason, and Jaylen, unless you want to include Ben Simmons in there.
I think Ben and maybe Tobias are both better than Kemba.
Not Tobias. I'll take Ben, but not Tobias.
Wow. I think Tobias is better than Ben right now.
If we're speaking from a playoff standpoint, again, I go back to Tobias' playoff numbers. It's like, what has he done in the playoffs?
That's fair. But by the same token, Kemba's been a shade of himself.
Absolutely. But that's because Kemba's been dealing with injuries, and I believe he's actually playing much better lately, if I'm not mistaken. I believe like lately he's kind of been getting himself into a rhythm.
I think it would be disappointing to see a series with them go 7. I don't think that would be a good taste. Even if they win, I don't think that would be a good taste. And I damn sure I don't think they would lose that series. I think Embiid's motivated. I think Ben's motivated. I think Doc would like to go back and beat his old stomping grounds. And I just don't think they have the depth to stay with the Sixers. And I think Embiid would foul Rob Williams, whoever else they want to put in there.
Yeah, he would destroy the big men. But Kemba over his last 5 games is averaging 29 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He's shooting 51% from the floor and 45% from deep. So
who are they playing?
Granted, it was against the one game was against Golden State, the first game. Second game was against Phoenix. Third game was against Charlotte. The fourth game was against Orlando, and then the 5th one came in there and their loss against Chicago. So again, you can kind of make the case, be like, oh, it's against those types of teams, but the fact that he's able to get himself into a rhythm a little bit, I feel like is a good sign for the Celtics.
Okay. So you could see them losing that series.
I don't think they lose that series just because Game 7 would be in Philadelphia, but like the Celtics are going to push them. It's not like the Celtics wouldn't.
Do you think who's the better coach between Brad and Doc?
Doc.
Okay.
I want to take Doc. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't see a scenario that goes more than 6. I think the Sixers would win it in 5 or 6. Over to the Heat. I have a laundry list of reasons to be worried about that.
I mean, listen, I'm right there with you. There are definitely a lot of reasons to be worried about the Miami Heat, and
those
again,
are
and again, what Austin mentioned earlier. The Heat are the 6th seed. So at this moment in time, they would avoid the play-in tournament, but they are only a game ahead of the Celtics, and they have 2 big games with the Celtics coming up starting today on Mother's Day. So the Heat are definitely a possibility. So, Austin, I'm sorry. Like, do you want to go first on this one, or?
I'll go first, yeah.
Okay.
So, well, I was thinking about this. Maybe the Heat lose intentionally. Maybe they like maybe they want to play Philly.
No, they definitely don't. I can promise you that they don't.
Why are you so confident in that?
Because like as much as I would definitely be worried about the Heat if I was a Sixers fan, the Heat aren't going to intentionally lose just to play in the play-in tournament. You know what I'm saying? Like this team went to the NBA Finals last year. And you could tell that and I feel like this is the case with the Lakers too. The grind of having to go to the finals, play deep into October, the quick turnaround combined with injuries and all the COVID protocols. Yeah. That's the only reason why for me that the Heat are the 6th seed in the East is because it was too much to overcome. But the Heat aren't going to be motivated to play in the play-in tournament. Like they're going to want to try to avoid that.
Fair. Okay. So no, let's start with the head coaching. I think it's fair to say that the Heat have a coaching advantage in that, and I think that could do
I
some
think it is too.
that could inflict. It might not lose you a whole series or a game, but there are certainly some some chess pieces that Spo could move, that could change the way a play plays out, and that could maybe change the course of a game. So I think that's a problem. I also think that like Jimmy's had a lot of time to gear up for the playoffs, even if it has been COVID or ankle injuries. He still had a lot of time to, heal up and mend and rest from a deep run last season. And
Absolutely.
I think that he's a different beast come playoff time. And I think that's problematic. Miami, I think, is deeper than Philly. I think like their benches, it's not the same as it was with Jay Crowder and Derek Jones Jr. and Kelly and Miles and whatnot, or Myers. But like they have a lot of wing depth. Duncan, Tyler, Iguodala,
And if Oladipo can come back at some point.
yeah, Bielitsa. They don't have the size that they used to have. So, I mean, I think like if Joe can get Bam in foul trouble, that would probably be the best thing for them, obviously. But Bam could tire Joel out. It'd be like the old man in the sea where he's just dragging the surviving whale back to the shore, and he's just like it's taking forever because the whale's so big. But I think like Jimmy just knows Joel and Ben better than any opponent they would face, and I think he knows their weaknesses and their strengths, and he can use that to an advantage. If the Sixers get switchy, which they do, they like to switch 1 through 3 or 1 through 4. He had the means to target and play Curry off the court, which is problematic, obviously. And then like if Miami goes zone, the Sixers could come to a halt offensively, like they did against the last couple of opponents. Now, granted, Ferk wasn't there. So I think that kind of changes some things because if it goes zone against the bench unit with Ferk, he can burn you, make you go back into man-to-man, and then it opens things up. Whereas without Ferk there, they don't have that knockdown shooter. But I think they're well. I think that the Heat are a very dangerous team for the Sixers. That's a series that I think that's the only series that I could see them potentially losing.
I could potentially see them losing that one as well, but it's just because the Heat, they are the defending Eastern Conference champions. We do have to give them that. So, and then also you just mentioned the bench. There's Goran Dragic comes off the bench, and that dude's an all-star. Goran Dragic is a very, very good basketball player. Then there's the Tyler Hero factor too, which you don't really know what you're going to get at a Hero. So it's like, are you going to get the guy who just absolutely slumped for a good majority of this season, or are you going to get the one who's going to hop off the bench and pour in 20 points? Then there's also Duncan Robinson, who did give the Sixers some trouble in their previous 2 matchups earlier this year in Philadelphia. Now, the Sixers did beat the Heat in both those games, but again, disclaimer, the Heat didn't have Dragic, they didn't have Butler, they didn't have Adebayo, and they were relying on Robinson and Hero and rookie Precious Achiuwa to beat the Sixers on the road. So the little disclaimer there, the Heat were going through all the health and safety protocols at the time. I was back in January. So it just I don't know, Austin. I feel like the Sixers again would beat the Heat, but that's the one series where I could be like, yeah, they could potentially lose that one. You don't want to face that team round 1.
Yeah, I damn sure. The last thing if you were to go to like a big game in that series, it would be game 2, because either the Heat are going to steal home court advantage, you're coasting into Miami, pretty comfortable. No nights out at Live. No nights out on Collins Street.
Right.
Whatever it is. Just take care of business, go up 3-1, go up 3-0, whatever, and then, you're done. Now, I just think that series could be problematic. I would still probably pick the Sixers in like 6. Maybe it goes 7, but I don't know. That's a tough series.
Agreed on the 6 or 7. Agreed on the 6 or 7 for sure. The same thing here.
Yeah. Now over to the Atlanta Hawks. I would have been more concerned if they hadn't handled them by 40 with a relatively healthy team when Trae Young played the other night against the Sixers. But I mean, like the drop coverage obviously is a problem and addressing. And I mean, Doc hasn't been. I haven't observed Doc being a great in-game adjustment kind of guy.
I feel like he did make a bit of an adjustment in that game, though, that you mentioned, because the Hawks
they were showing really hard early in the first quarter. Then they stopped away from it. It was drop coverage, and they went back to it, and that was the game.
And remember, Atlanta went up 21-8 in that game. So it was just like, sure, the Hawks kept getting into the paint between Trae Young and being able to drop passes off to a Clint Capella. But I mean, another thing too is, Austin, they didn't have DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, or Kevin Huerter for I think either of those games, and those are three main guys. And I don't think they had Bogdanovich for either of those games either.
They had Gallinari for the second game.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, I don't know that they haven't had Hunter or Reddish really all year. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they have been hurt for a good majority of the season.
I don't know that they would have been available all playoffs. So, I mean, we'll see. But I think like Capella might be able to steal a game against Joe Ellis, like maybe like neutralize him at least for one game. But plus, like if they're healthy, they can mix it up with Gallo, Bogdan, as you said, Hunter, Reddish, and Huerter. And I know for sure the Sixers don't have that wing depth to be able to move chess pieces with them like that. And I think like if the Hawks go small, that could be really problem.
And then there's the Lou Williams factor, man. We're all forgetting about Lou Williams here. That's
right, Pandemic Lou.
Yeah, Lemon Pepper Lou.
That's right, him too. Lemon Pepper Lou. That's right. How many games did that series go?
Realistically speaking, I would probably say 5 or 6. Just because you want to talk about experience. The only guy on that roster has playoff experience is Lou and Clint.
Yeah. I think it probably goes 5 is what I would say.
Yeah.
Now our last team, the New York Knickerbockers.
This is a team that scares me a bit, Austin.
Really?
They do.
I can't get myself psyched out for this team. I just can't.
They do, and it's just because all 3 games, man, all 3 games were slug fights. You know what I'm saying? They were street fights. Like all 3 games were just ridiculously tough. And Tom Thibodeau, he just like he mucks the game up. And then there's a Julius Randle factor too, and I will give Tobias credit. He really locked down Julius Randle for the one game they played in Philadelphia. The other 2 games were played in New York, but the game in Philadelphia, Tobias really put Julius Randle in a straitjacket. He did a hell of a job. But like they're just, when it comes to the Knicks, man, that team is that team is tough. That team is physical. That team is scary. That team will muck it up. There's a lot about the Knicks that does scare me a little bit, especially for Joel, just because of how physical they are. Like, God forbid they hit him in the wrong spot, and then boom, he's out. So like,
yeah,
it's just the way the Knicks play that scares me a bit.
Yeah, I just can't find a reason to get myself all worked up over the Knicks. I think so they're a top 4 defense.
Yeah.
I mean, they make you work to begin with. They allow the 4th fewest points in the paint to begin with, and Philly is actually in the bottom half of the league in shooting efficiency less than 10 feet. So, I mean,
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like the Tobias he's a better finisher, but not a great finisher. Ben's obviously had a lot of problems finishing this year.
Yeah,
I think Shake is fine. Joel is obviously pretty good, but I think they over the course of a 7-game series, I think finishing around the rim would become a problem. Knicks have the physical bodies at the Sixers. They're very big. Sixers are big too, but I think they're built in a way that's more for finesse and less for junk it up type play. And I think like Philly could legitimately struggle to score in the paint, and then in which case, do they have the arsenal to to light it up from three for multiple games in a series to win that way? I don't think so.
You're not wrong about that. You're not. But for me, it's like the Sixers have the shooting, obviously, with Seth and Danny, and Tobias has taken huge steps forward. You also mentioned Furkan earlier, but it's just like the Knicks. The Knicks are just such a terrific defensive team that they're going to shut off any safety valve for Ben. When Ben goes to the basket, I noticed it whenever they played the Knicks this year. He always kind of seemed to turn the ball over on multiple occasions rather than being able to kick it out to his open shooters, just because of the way the Knicks play defense. So it's just like the Knicks to me are a scary defensive team, and especially for a team like Philadelphia that relies so much on dribble penetration and getting to the basket and kicking out. And Ben, we all know his playoff struggles when it comes to scoring. I feel like that would be the one series, the one first round series, that would be an issue, that Ben doesn't shoot a jump shot.
To be fair, he has been taking more jumpers lately. I know people don't want to hear it, but don't give me that look. You watch the games. He has been taking more. Last game he played, I think like one got stripped from him as he went up with it, and he kind of lost it in air.
Against New Orleans.
Yeah, but he has been taking more jumpers lately. He has.
I mean, listen, again, you're right, but it's just. It's not gonna he only takes one a game, and it's just like, dude, you have so many more options, and I think it's going to hinder them come playoff time. It is going to be an issue. I've been saying this all season, that is going to be an issue, and the only team I feel like it's going to be a real issue with is going to be the Knicks, just because of the way they play defense.
Well, then I think Doc adjusts to put Ben more as a screener in the pick and roll in the two-man game, like they have with Seth and Danny a little bit and Tobias, and I think that neutralizes the issue. Sure.
Again, the Sixers would beat the Knicks, but I would say 5 or 6.
Okay, so you're worried about the Knicks. It goes 5 or 6.
I'm worried about the Knicks. I'm worried about the Knicks not because the Knicks have more talent. I'm worried about the Knicks just because of the way they play defense. And again, it's kind of like what I was texting you a couple weeks ago. They're like the new school grit and grind Grizzlies. They're like that team you don't want to play because they're going to be rough and tough and physical as hell with you.
Yeah, I also think like we say Sixers and 6 or whatever it is. This year, that might mean that they're going on the road to win Game 6, and I don't know that they have the cojones to go on the road and win a Game 6. You know what I mean?
They could, but yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's either 5 or 7.
I have concerns against the series with the Knicks and with Miami. And then obviously Washington, but I look at Philadelphia and they definitely have a shot to really make it to the NBA Finals this year just because of everything they have. But they really have not really blown me away too much this season, if that makes sense.
And I think of lately, it's been problematic just because they've been blowing a lot of leads. And Doc is concerned about it, at least towards us, but how could you not be a little bit concerned about that? So if you had to rank your the teams in that first round by concern, who would be top of your list?
Probably Miami, and then the Knicks would probably be second.
And the next one?
Boston.
Then Charlotte.
Probably. Probably Washington.
Okay. Then Atlanta.
Then Atlanta, then Charlotte, then Indiana.
Okay. So you really don't think Indiana is a problem? Okay.
I really don't. I don't. And it's because they're blowing up. They're imploding. Like you can see it. They're just with this whole Bjorkgren nonsense and this story coming out, and TJ Warren asking for a trade apparently before the season even started because they hired Bjorkgren.
That was bullshit. They didn't actually request a trade. But we'll see. I think it's like it's pretty funny to think about. Like this dude would rather have you cut into his body than play for this fucking guy.
That's what I'm saying. The story is just absolutely crazy. The report that came out, I was like, what?
I'd rather
have surgery
let you alter my body in some way, shape, or form than
play basketball for this guy.
That's a pretty big blow.
It is.
Get to some of the comments here. God forbid Ben ever suffers an injury that hinders his athleticism. What would he do? I kind of think he already has had that injury. I think the back thing last year, or whatever it was, the knee has zapped his athleticism a little bit. Not too much, but I think he's a different player than he was his rookie year.
Where?
What do you mean where?
He's the same player.
No, like I think he's a little less explosive and a little less like I'm gonna ram the ball down your throat. Like
Okay.
last year he was getting all kinds of dunks and crazy, and between your legs shit, and it was showtime. And I think he's lost a bit of that athleticism this year. He's had a couple of nice dunks recently, but generally speaking, I think he's a little less athletic.
Okay.
Chongo Chalupa says Sixers have better players than the Knicks. I do, but the Knicks could beat them in a 7-game series. Knicks playoff hope you rely on Silo and Randall's shoulders through although Rose was a good pickup. I heard this their plus minus or their like net rating with Derrick Rose in the lineup is I think like plus 13 per 100, which is astronomical. So
that's crazy.
He's been a massive upgrade for them this season and sort of underrated a bit. I think I got that stat from the Low Post podcast, so don't want to shortchange anybody. Not
out Zach Lowe.
Yeah. But like, do you like believe that Julius Randle can win a playoff series?
Against who? Philly?
Anybody?
Oh, against anybody?
He's totally unproven. Never been in playoffs before in his life.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's never been in the playoffs before. But another thing is though, like I remember I actually had this conversation with somebody, and somebody was like, the Sixers, if they get the 1 seed, is a cakewalk to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I'm like, what have they done in the playoffs that have proven that they deserve it's a cakewalk, praise upon them? Like, what have they done in the playoffs? Like, again, different regime is Brett, but 2018, 2019, and 2020, like, what have the Sixers ever done in the playoffs for us to be like, if they get the 1 seed, that's a total cakewalk to the Eastern Conference Finals? Like, no.
Look at the teams in their past. Knicks, Hawks, second round, and it's let's just say for argument purposes, it's Indiana, Charlotte, or Washington. What have those teams done?
I hear it, but I feel like a lot of people really need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. They like the Sixers still have a ton to prove. It's not like they.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's like they're this proven team where it's like you come playoff time and it's like, they're going to the finals, and it's like, no, pump the brakes. So let's just kind of see how they do. They have a shot, but again, I still like Brooklyn. I still like Milwaukee.
Yeah. Wow. And Milwaukee has also proven a lot in the playoffs that they can't win the playoffs. So.
Yeah, they can't. But I feel like the Bucks are a big matchup problem for Philadelphia.
I agree. Nadir says, "Hi guys, what's wrong with Shake? Should he be sent to the G League?"
No.
They can't. They can't send him to the G League because there's no G League season right now. The season ended.
That season was only a month for 1 month.
What's going on here?
So that's one. But no, I feel like Shake is just still trying to really try to become a point guard when really he should just kind of focus on scoring. That's just me.
Yeah, he needs to be in that line drive category that Doc likes, where he just making quick decisions and getting back to like spot shooting and then just dribbled penetration off the catch real quickly. Logan says Tatum is not as good as Kai is making him out to be. He has great games, but he has more ineffective bad games than good games.
Sure.
I mean, have you seen some of Tatum's box scores here?
I have. But Jason Tatum is still an all-star player, and he's a proven player. Like in his short career, he's a proven player.
I think proven is a relative word.
Okay, okay. So
because he's proven what? He's gotten to the conference finals. That's
and Ben and Joel haven't been able to do that.
Right. So then you're basically, but like if the goal is to get to the finals to be a proven player, then
even in the playoffs, though, Austin. I mean, like, let's be real, man. Like, listen, I get it. You're a Sixers fan through and through, but take off the Sixers colored glasses and realize what this guy does. Like, Jason Tatum has been, an animal, like throughout his entire carear. Like he's everything else game twice.
Listen, I totally agree that Tatum is a really, 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 really good player. But I think if you're evaluating them through the spectrum of like, if proven is as binary as you've been to the finals or you haven't, then he hasn't proven anything.
Okay, then let's just kind of break down Tatum's playoff numbers. His first career playoff series against Milwaukee, he averaged 15 a night. Okay. Second round against Philly in 2018, he averaged 23. In the Eastern Conference Finals against Cleveland, he averaged 18. 2019, round one against Indiana, he averaged 19. Eastern Conference semifinals against Milwaukee. Well, I mean, to be fair, that entire Celtic team struggled. He only averaged 12 against the Bucks. But then in the bubble, he averaged 27 and 10 against Philly, 24 and 10 against Toronto. And then the conference finals, he averaged 26 and a half and 10 with 7 assists.
So then, relatively speaking, he's more he's certainly more proven than Ben Simmons. I don't have Joel's numbers in front of me, but I would venture to say they're not that far off from Tatum's.
I mean, Joel averaged 30 and 10 in the playoffs against Boston last year. He averaged 30 and 10.
Right.
So, and the only reason why Sixers really lost that series was because really just the roster was awful. Like, so you have to kind of chalk up the roster space. But my thing is, though, I mean, just for people saying, oh, Jason Tatum isn't all that, like, no, stop. Like, Jason Tatum has won in the playoffs. Like, this dude has actually won playoff series. He's been deep into the postseason. He just so keeps happening. He ran into LeBron James in 2018. And then in 2019, they ran into Giannis and also had internal issues with Kyrie and just like everything that was going on with that. And then in 2020, they probably should have beaten Miami. They just didn't. So it's like, oh, come on.
So then it sounds – so then they haven't proven themselves. Then the binary is, have you gotten to the conference finals? That's basically what the binary is in this case.
I mean, I guess so, if you want to do that, yeah.
Okay. So that's fair. That's fair. The Sixers' colored glasses are off. And my credibility has been crushed. But other than that, we're good to go. All right, Kai. Kai, where can they find you?
You found me on Twitter and Instagram at Kai_Carlin, and you can always check out SixersWire.com for all your Sixers news updates over there.
I am Austin Krell. You can find me on Twitter at NBA Krell. I cover the Sixers for the Painted Lines. Also find me on YouTube at thepaintedlines.com, where I do all my writing and all that stuff. I am not as biased as Kai is making me out to be. That is.
He's not. He's really not. I made a little bit of a poke there. But like, no.
This is like this is like when Windhorst or when Bontemps called Windhorst a jackass. This is like that to a
Bontemps called who?
Windhorst the jackass.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that.
Yes,
oh.
I am the Windhorst and you are the Bontemps. I am the jackass in this case. But
wow, I didn't see that.
Yep, it was quite good entertainment. As always, everybody, appreciate you tuning in. Everybody have a great Mother's Day holiday. Spend time with your loved ones. And we'll see you next week on another episode of the Feed to Embiid. As always, Kai, appreciate you hopping on. I am Austin Krell. We'll see you next week, everybody. Have a good week.